I think we'll get started. Thank you all for coming despite the weather. Every time that Jacque, Schultze and I have come to the Parliament to organise this exhibition, it has poured. So it wouldn't have been right if it hadn't poured rain today. Not to worry. As an acknowledgement of country, I'd like to read from the Handbook of Quaker Practice and Procedure in Australia. Quakers in Australia acknowledge that we live and worship on the lands of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, country which gives them physical and spiritual identity and is filled with the spirit presence of their ancestors. We acknowledge the sovereignty of Australia's first peoples over the land we inhabit, that the land was taken from them at devastating cost with no just resolution, that this trauma is ongoing and diminishes us all, that our testimonies call us to be in right relationship with all peoples, the land and our environment. Therefore, we seek in our daily lives to educate ourselves about the true history and present reality of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and uphold their right to self-determination, to acknowledge within ourselves and bring into the light that which contributes to the debilitating effects of racism, insensitivity, lack of awareness, and misrepresentation. And we seek in our daily lives to work towards justice and peace and healing for us all. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. I'll start with me. My name is Mary Jane Hogan. I'm a attender at Devonshire Street, Quaker Meeting House here in Sydney. The first speaker, once I introduce everyone, is Jacque Schultze. Jacque is also from Sydney, from Wahroonga Meeting, well known to many of the Quakers in this room. She will start us off with a brief introduction to Quakerism, which many people have heard of, but few people know actually what it is. Then we'll hear from Sally O'Weill, who is... Sally is here. Yes, Sally is here. Sally, with Margaret Bywater, they are the co-conveners of the Friends in Stitches, and that is the coordinating Quaker body for the production of the wonderful tapestries that are on the far wall. And finally, the last speaker will be the member for Sydney, Alex Greenwich, in whose electorate the Devonshire Street Quaker Meeting stands. Alex is our parliamentary host for this exhibition, and he will officially open the exhibition. So at this point, I'll invite Jacque to come forward.
Thank you, Mary Jane. I appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see such a good crowd here. I've been asked to give a brief introduction to Quakerism. The religious society of Friends had its origin in England in the 17th century. And it sprang from the religious experience of George Fox. However, like-minded seekers at that time found their way to join Fox and others in worship. From 1861 onwards, Quaker meetings were recognized by British Friends in several locations around Australia. Quakers have never had a creed that sets out what to believe. Quaker belief is more a set of questions and challenges than a set of well-formulated answers. Gathering in community is important to us as we seek answers and understanding. Quakers tend to get on with what they see needing to be done towards making the world a better place. Quaker testimonies. Mary Jane mentioned our testimonies. Quaker testimonies express what guides what we work for. They are known by some as the spices, and that represents simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and earth care.
My name is Sally O'Weill, and as Mary Jane said, I'm one of the co-conveners along with Tessa Spratt and Margaret Bywater of the Friends in Stitches. And as you can see from the way I'm dressed, I am from Tasmania. I got involved in the Friends in Stitches 12 years ago now. I belong to a small meeting in northwest Tasmania. I come from Forth, the onion capital of the world. And Tessa and Kathy Davies came to our small meeting and ran a session where they taught us about the project to tell the story of Australian Quakerism in stitching, and they taught us the basic stitches. And I made this badge that I'm wearing on that occasion, and I'm still proudly wearing it. It was my first project. I went away from that workshop quite inspired, and my main motivation, I have to admit, was I just wanted to put our meeting into the story. And so I went away and did a sketch of an action that we had recently taken part, and that Tessa and Kathy were incredibly enthusiastic about my sketch and wouldn't let me drop it. And so that's how I started. So I'll go back now right to the beginning of how it all began. So it began in 1981 in England when there was a children's meeting, and the person who was leading that children's meeting was a woman called Anne Wilson. And she'd been telling Quaker stories to the children, and they were going to draw a sort of like a frieze of the story because she was studying the Bayeux tapestry, I think. I think she was doing a PhD in the Bayeux tapestry. Anyway, one of the children who was there, a 9-year-old boy, said, "Why can't we embroider it?" And that got her thinking. She recognised a problem in the British Quakers, which was that there were a lot of older Quakers who were quite lonely and isolated, and then there were a lot of new Quakers who didn't really know the history of Quakerism or the stories. So she tried to bring these two groups together, and they started stitching in 1981, and very soon it took off. And now they've got 77 panels, they've got a purpose-built museum, and they've got over 4,000 people got involved in stitching those panels. And they're wonderful. That's the Kendall tapestry. So a couple of Australians, Verley Callagher and Francis Love, went to England and were volunteers at that museum. And when they were coming home, this was in 2005, I think, they were coming home, and they said, or maybe 2007, I'm a bit unclear about the date, they said to each other on the plane, wouldn't it be great if we had such a thing in Australia to tell the uniquely Australian story of Australian Quakerism? When they got back, they started a soup stall in the streets of Katoomba, selling soup to raise money to bring the director of the museum to Australia to run workshops. So when Gary Duncan and Kathy Davies got wind of this as New South Wales Quakers, they got behind them and took it through the various Quaker governing bodies, got some funding, and in due course in 2007, Bridget Guest, the director of the Kendall Tapestry, came out to Australia and ran a workshop at Devonshire Street here in Sydney and another one in the Blue Mountains. Tessa Spratt went to that workshop. She just retired, and that was it. She was in. So they started working to bring together the Australian Quaker Narrative Embroidery project, Friends in Stitches. They had to make a lot of decisions about how it was the format, and so they decided to sort of follow the model that had been set by the British Kendall Tapestry, which was based in turn on the Bayeux Tapestry. So you'll see those three sections. You'll see that the writing is all in the same font and uses the same colour, and that brings it all together as one work, even though they're all individually different. They got some fabric. They commissioned a woman called Faulkner, Kay Faulkner? Kay Faulkner, thank you. Senior's moment. Kay Faulkner, which is an internationally reputed weaver, and she wove with Australian wool enough for 70 panels. And the Australian Quakers funded her to do that. So Kathy started the first panel, which was the Sydney Parkinson's panel, and she had to make a lot of decisions, and I guess she consulted with other people in the group. By the end of 2008, 2009, there were 8 stitching groups around Australia of people learning the stitches, coming up with ideas, designing panels, and there was a list of about 9 possible panels that had been put down. So of those, 5 have been created into work, and 3 of those are exhibited here in this exhibition. So we were away. One of the stitching groups I need to mention is the South Australian Stitching Group, which was the longest lasting of all the stitching groups, and they have produced 7 of the panels. We now have 25 panels, and COVID came along. That was a bit of a problem for us. We took a bit of a hit with that because we couldn't have exhibitions, we couldn't have workshops, and but on the good side, we did have time at home during Zoom meetings to do stitching. And I finally, after 12 years, finished. No, it wasn't 12 years. It was 8 years. After 8 years, I finished the embroidery that I had sketched way back in 2012. So that finally was put together, and that's Cherish Our Place, which you'll see in the exhibition. And so that was good. Today, the people who were originally involved are ageing. Some people have died. Others have lost their ability to do embroidery because their eyesight has failed or their fingers have failed, and some people are in nursing homes. However, we continue to attract new people to become involved. For example, the Brisbane Arboretum panel, which you'll see, was finished by members of the Brisbane Embroiderers Guild, none of whom were Quakers, but they were interested and they saw that it needed to be finished. They picked it up and finished it. Soon this year I'll be going to Broken Hill. There are no Quakers in Broken Hill, but there's a famous Quaker who comes from Broken Hill, and we have an artist in Broken Hill who is designing a panel, and we will run some workshops there, and that panel will be stitched by the community in Broken Hill, none of whom are Quakers. And this is the way we're going to keep on growing our project. So I'd particularly like to thank Kathy and Tessa, who held the fort for so long as the co-conveners. I'd like to thank Mary Jane, who's done so much work to get this organisation together, this exhibition, and I'd like to thank Alex Greenwich for his work in sponsoring our exhibition. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Alex Greenwich to come to the microphone now. When I contacted Alex's office about 2 weeks ago, just for the final, is there anything I need to do, no, whatever, the staff were a little bit, not quite on the ball. I thought, what's going on? And then I realised that it was the morning after the all-night sitting of Parliament when the legislation to ban gay conversion therapy went through at 7 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of the work was done by Alex Greenwich. So, Alex, as the member for Sydney, I'll invite you now.
Well, good afternoon, friends. Can I also join you in acknowledging that we are meeting here on Gadigal land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I welcome you all to the New South Wales Parliament, and can I also just thank Mary Jane, Jacque and Sally for their words. I found that all to be really interesting and really informative. I have been the member for Sydney for about 12 years. Prior to that, I was heavily involved in the marriage equality campaign. And that's when I had first interaction with Quakers. Quakers were one of the first religious groups, in fact, probably one of the first groups in Australian society to support that reform, to lead the way and to make space for others to indeed support marriage equality, something that was achieved in 2017 after many decades of activism. And I've always had a great and deep respect for Quakers and the work you do, the peace that you live and that you share, your values of love, peace, supporting the environment, social justice and equality. And I'm just really grateful to you for the role you play in Australian society. And it is so wonderful that you're able to express that role, that contribution, through the Embroidery project, through the Friends and Stitches that is on show here in New South Wales Parliament. Today is not a sitting day in New South Wales Parliament. From my standpoint, that's a good thing. It's nice when I've got the building to myself with nice people around, but it will be a sitting day soon. And I'm just really grateful for the gift that your exhibit is to the Parliament. I'm sure a lot of my colleagues will be able to enjoy it, walk past it, read the stories and really see the picture that you are painting and the messages that you are sending. Again, I'm just really grateful to sponsor and host this exhibit in the New South Wales Parliament. It is indeed a gift to the Parliament that you have put this on. I know these exhibits take a lot of work and a lot of effort to organise, let alone the embroidery. I find embroidery actually very intimidating. I could never do it. So I'm always impressed when I see someone do something that I can't do, and I thank you for that. So it is my absolute honour to officially open this really important, this really informative, and this really wonderful exhibit that you're providing the Parliament with. Thank you.